now we're going to pivot into our good friends from Seattle. Scott Plusquellec, Kitty Wu, Shannon Welles, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see all of you. So today's, I feel like a hard conversation. We have been, again, I think most of the folks who participate in this program are very familiar with the Reopen Every Venue Safely initiative that Music Policy Forum launched in April of 2020. Seattle and King County has been one of our anchor pilots throughout that time. And Shannon and Kitty have been at the table essentially every 2 weeks for over a year with Scott and Dina Morris and Kate Becker and others, kind of going on this journey together about what does it mean to reopen music as quickly and safely as possible when science allows, and how do we talk about it? And, I think certainly from my perspective, a lot of us have been in a real sort of dichotomous mode for over a year, but certainly in the last month, that we have the sort of sense of being a little bit overwhelmed as things are getting to this next stage of reopening and trying to figure out how this is going to work, and really just the pragmatic realities of this. And also just extraordinarily thankful that community leaders like you have, and folks in cities across the country have come to the table to try to think through this in real time and a sense of community and partnership. So first of all, thank you for joining. And Scott, you've been with us before, and Shannon's been with us before. Kitty, I think this is your first time on this show. I know you were part of our intensive back in November. Alex, if you get to it, let's drop some links to their archives so people can go back and see some of the stuff that Scott and Shannon have said previously. But in the meantime, Scott, let's start with you. How are you? What do we need to know? What's the temperature in Seattle? Not literally the temperature. What's the metaphorical temperature in Seattle?
Yeah, you don't know. You don't want to know how cold it is here today. Oh my God. Things are very interesting right now. We have been informed by our governor that we are fully reopening on June 30th in the state. Which is a bit of a whiplash-inducing statement, given that 2 weeks ago we were looking at perhaps going backwards into a more stricter phase. So I think it took everybody by surprise, and we're now at a point where just really trying to figure out what does that mean, and what does it mean for an industry that really can't open on June 30th, and that we are, there's a delay between the idea of being able to open your doors fully on a set date at the end of June, and when tours will actually be happening, and when bands can be booked, and what all that looks like, and how to get your staff back and trained and or hired or rehired or all of that. So bit of a scramble as people are trying to figure this out. I think it's a mixture of like awkward enthusiasm that yay, we're towards the end of this maybe, and how great it'll be to have performances and live music again, and also kind of this, oh crap, what are we gonna do kind of thing. So I think that's the temperature.
And Scott, for those who weren't able to see your appearance on the program a couple months ago, talk a little bit about your role in the city and kind of how you see yourself fitting in to the broader ecosystem, especially as it relates to the nightlife economy.
Sure. So my title is, I'm with the City of Seattle. I'm the nightlife business advocate. I work in the Office of Economic Development. My role is sort of three-pronged. One is to just be support and a liaison for our live music venues, our nightclubs, our cabarets, folks doing the nighttime economy work, and helping them navigate the bureaucracy of the city, and then working on developing policies and programs that will support and expand not just the entertainment side of nightlife and the nightlife economy, but just the full range of life at night and the work that is happening throughout our city when most of us are asleep. So really just working to make sure that we have a really vibrant and safe nights here in Seattle.
Yeah, and one of the, I think you guys probably get a little bit tired about hearing what a national model Seattle is, and at some points probably like, enough is enough. But Seattle certainly is, has a reputation and the reality of, when we talk about this kind of ecosystem thinking and the notion of all this, trying to get the alignment between industry, public sector, philanthropy, nonprofit sector, education, everybody just trying to figure out how do we align resources and strategies to try to support each other. Seattle and the region, King County and the region, certainly is been willing to engage with the complexity of how hard that work is, but how important that is for a long time. And bringing Kitty in, Kitty, you work with 206 Zulu. You wear 14 hats like many people in the community, but talk a little bit about 206 Zulu and kind of what brought you into this sort of Revs network over the last year or so.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Seattle piece because it's really interesting. I'm from 206 Zulu. My name's Kitty Wu. I'm the co-director here, and we're a little bit different than the other venues. We're a rental hall. We are housed in a beautiful building. It's a 100-year-old building called Washington Hall. We're a it's owned by a public development association called Historic Seattle. So we are a little different. But one of the beautiful things that came out of this pandemic is all of these venues working together. It happened immediately, under the leadership of some really forward-thinking folks. But it was just really great to have. I wouldn't even consider it a complaining session every week, but just us really just trying to figure out how we're going to move forward. And with everything going on, the CDC obviously kind of threw us for a loop last week. But, I think the main thing is like, how are we going to move forward in this? And what are the pieces that we need to get our venue workers back? And because, I'm sure a lot of we lost some of our venue workers. So getting the ones that are able to come back and getting them just really geared up for it's looking like, for us at least, it's looking like a September date. We have some private events that are happening, which makes it feel a little bit safer because we can, work with smaller groups. But by September, it's looking like things are really gonna move forward.
Yeah, and I think tragically in the community, when you use the word lost, this is not people leaving the workforce. Literally people who've we've lost. And Shannon, I know you had to kind of go from Shannon Welles with the Showbox Theater, the famous venue in Seattle, which had been in the middle of a huge sort of collective effort to save the venue, right? To save the Showbox, and then slamming right into pandemic. And I know you've, really been at the forefront of trying to make sure that as we think about music stakeholders, we think about community members, we think about the human element of this crisis, that venue workers can kind of sometimes be left out of that equation a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about some of the organizing that you did early? And I know you talked about some of the stuff on previous programs, but just some of the early stuff, and then we can kind of pick up to where we are today.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, it's interesting because I had been working to save the Showbox for 2 years already by the time the pandemic hit. So I was already in the mindset of talking to public officials, trying to explain to them the importance of place and of music places and what they mean to people. And we got a lot of the venue workers involved in that campaign. So it was like I'd already started building those networks. And so when the pandemic hit, we all started meeting together. So the opportunity to join Revs came up and I jumped right in. And I really focused on venue workers a lot because I am a venue worker and I have worked in venues for over 20 years. So I know that life really well. And I've also worked in Seattle, downtown in Seattle for 20 years. So I know what it's like to live at night and to be out there on the street at night and to, so that connects with Scott's work because that's what he's trying to advocate for. So we speak the same language and it's really helpful to have him in that position as an advocate. And so early on, there were a lot of issues with unemployment and our workers getting unemployment. And part of it was maybe they didn't have enough hours. So they didn't meet the hours threshold to get that. And the PUA, the federal programs, didn't exist then. So we were looking at all of these employees who were not going to be able to have any money coming in, and everybody was freaking out. So for about 3 months, I helped people navigate unemployment. And as the federal programs were rolling out, like trying to get employees to understand what it meant and helping them sign up for unemployment. And so during that time, there was the extra $600 a week for a while with the federal program, but then that was going away in July. So a couple people reached out to offer support in some way, like we want to raise money to give to the staff. So timing wise, it seemed like, okay, this is going to happen right as the federal money is going away, like the extra 600. So what are people going to need? Well, they're going to need money to pay rent and all that, but they're really going to need money to buy food. So we couldn't raise enough money to pay everybody's rent, but we could certainly buy food for people. So we did a couple of big fundraisers. We sold some posters and some ticket masks. And Alex, if you want to throw up the picture screen now, that would be good. So we arranged 2 big grocery days for the Showbox. We did one in July of 2020, and then we did one in February of this year. And these were, so basically other people in the community approached me. They made the products that we sold. They gave me the money. I partnered with our concessionaire to use their suppliers, and so we could get things at a wholesale rate. And so we bought in bulk huge bags of rice and beans, and we bagged them all up for people. We made these grocery bags and boxes, and each employee got to like 2 to 4 bags or boxes of food. It was a lot of food. So it was stuff, both like fresh food that we bought from local farmers through these distributors, and then also canned and dry storage items that would last for months. And honestly, like they have pasta probably for the next 2 years. Like they will never run out of pasta. So, I mean, it was very successful. And the employees felt loved and seen. And part of we talk about the Showbox family all the time. And so they felt part of the family, and that people in the community were sticking up for them. And it was really heartening. And so that so after that, we started talking more in Revs about like, what more can we do to support the workers? And so that'll kind of transition over to, I don't know, are we going back to Kitty to talk about what we're doing?
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go
sure.
back to Kitty.
And just this idea of like, as we're coming, closer, we've been, as Michael said, we have lost people. And everything that we've been together collectively, we're grieving. We haven't had to have, these collective, really spaces where we were able to heal together. We've had, there's anxiety, there's isolation. And as we're coming closer to this edge of like, we're about to reopen and things are getting better, but why don't we feel better? This idea of like wellness and mental health, and just really, this idea came about, like, can we do something in a similar vein where we're, one, it's a celebration, because it can be a bummer talking about mental health issues. It's not necessarily always the funnest thing, or that folks even want to go to, like, it's not on my top of my list of like, let me go to a wellness event. But really getting our venues together, getting all of our venue workers, front of house and back of house, and kind of putting it out all on the table. So we have an event coming up. It's the last Tuesday of the month. It's ironically the day before the state opens up. But really just coming together to listen to some music, get on the same page, and provide some resources with public health and sound mental health, SMASH, Hold Your Crown. And we're just getting started. What am I missing, Scott?
No, that was a great summary. The one other piece that we're looking at is maybe having a vaccination pop-up truck there, so that people who have not been able to get their vaccinations yet would do that. But I just, one of the things that I'm most proud about with Revs that we've developed over this past year is touching back on what both Kitty and Shannon have said, is the community that has formed amongst these venue owners that really didn't actually know each other very well before. And we've had some really powerful meetings, emotional meetings, where, especially around this subject, where we started talking about these issues, where people were extremely just bearing things and really letting loose with the emotional toll that this year has had, and I don't think that there's been enough of that. And so this was a space. What started as this group of like, oh my God, let's get together and figure out how we're gonna physically survive. This has really turned into a support group in many ways. We talked about maybe we should have fewer meetings, or do we even need to continue? And people were adamant that we had to continue, that we had to, even just having we've gone to 2 every other week, but we were having weekly, but at every other week, just being able to have a place to come together and talk about these issues. So, and what became very clear to me was that how much these owners, operators, managers cared for their employees. And so it was just really important that we do something to acknowledge and give them some space as well. So
just to pick up on that quickly, Scott, again, we've been really fortunate and humbled, is a better word. We've been very humbled to support 18 Revs pilot communities across the country. We also recognize that means there are thousands of cities that don't have a Revs pilot project. They may or may not be having these kind of conversations locally. And something that we are really trying to figure out what we can do to kind of transfer some of those ideas and recommendations out to people who have not had the kind of infrastructure and the benefit from what we've had with Revs. With Revs, it's been remarkable to talk to Louisville and then take their ideas and put them through Cleveland and take it to Austin and take it to Seattle and have the kind of cross, kind of cultural network that has been allowing people to be thought partners and collaborators in real time. So we really do hope that we can, again, in a meaningful way, try to get some of these core ideas out there. And again, I think today in this conversation, we're just taking a big, a small piece of this, which is just trying to be very intentional with understanding what are the broader needs beyond economics of our venue employees. So let's talk just a little bit about, we talked about the CDC. We talked about, of course, last week in last week's program extensively when we had Curtis and Sean on talking about the NEVA reopening guidelines. One of the, again, sort of the complicated. So first of all, I feel very strongly that the CDC is working in good faith. And I think everybody is working in good faith. I don't think people are trying to be undermining. I don't think they're trying to, I think people are doing the best they can do. And I think, the decision was made, on a scientific level and on a political level that we need to simplify this decision for now that we're at a point where access to vaccines is not the challenge. It's not a supply issue, it's a demand issue. So I understand the thinking behind trying to simplify and say, look, if you're vaccinated, you get to do basically whatever you want to do. If you're not vaccinated, you've got to make a lot of choices. And so I understand that from a messaging standpoint. Clearly what that's done though is put a lot of pressure on our venue community where it's not quite that easy. And, I'd like for y'all to dig in just a little bit more in terms of what are we anticipating? What are you anticipating in terms of how do we talk to audiences? How do you talk to your employees? How do you talk to bands about what you want to do at your venue? And how do we make sure that we're not asking our venue employees who already are overtaxed and stressed to have to play an entirely different role of like security guards and like, narcs, trying to enforce this stuff? That's an easy question, right? Anybody want to speak to any of that stuff?
Well, I'm hoping by the time we reopen, we're not going to be in this 100% vax only type of scenario where we're asking people to prove things. Because I think that people that are trying to open right now might be considering that. We might not open until September. Maybe we'll have some shows in August. We're still trying to figure out the date. But I'm not really envisioning a scenario where we're enforcing this vaccination policy where you have to prove things. So that would take the pressure off. I don't know about mask wearing. I don't think we're going to be requiring masks, but optional. But I don't know. I think there's still so many unknowns. But maybe we'll have the benefit of waiting a little longer so we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. It's so strange because we're 14 months into it, but I feel like there's still so many unknowns. I think for us, we're, I think masks is going to be a thing for a while. I don't think we'll necessarily be requiring everyone to wear masks inside, but for our staff, like a lot of people are just going to wear it. You know, yeah, there's a lot of questions, more questions than answers, I would say.
Yeah, we're really in sort of what?
No, I know it's like an impossible question.
It's very much a gray area, and I think we talked about this yesterday on the town hall, but I think one thing that perhaps will alleviate or help facilitate this some way is to try to have uniformity of experience from venue to venue, so that if you go to Kitty's venue and you are, whatever your experience is there around vaccinations or temperature checks or masks or whatever, that if you the next night go to Shannon's venue, your experience is exactly the same, so that you're not sort of whiplashing and being confused as, well, the night before I did this and they didn't care whether I wore a mask or not. And so just to try to keep the lid on any sort of confusion and belligerency and whatever else reactions might come, because I think we're going to have a lot of really hyped up, excited people who are going out and want to be there. And so as I really think that, I think it's going to be hard to do that, but I think that if the messaging is similar and the experience is similar, then I think there will be some ease of purpose in existence across the board.
Well, the one thing, and again, it's sort of the obvious, God, I'm really struggling with language today. I mean, I don't think it's overstated to say part of the tragedy of COVID over the past 14 months has been the diversity of experiences, where some states and regions have really been they've been trying to err on the side of keeping people safe. And there have been some states and regions that maybe don't have the same values, or they've had a different approach. And it's been very different to see, as we move into this next stage of reopening, certain states where mask mandates are illegal, or there are other sort of things that businesses are not allowed to do. Washington State, Oregon, other states are probably going to be in a little bit of a different position in terms of being, eager and willing to sort of work with business to figure out what can we do. Kitty, you've spoken very eloquently about some of the equity challenges around vaccines and some of the things we can't just take for granted.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem that we're going to run into is, one, there are people that have health reasons, autoimmune diseases and issues why they really vaccines actually don't work for their bodies. And I think that's just one thing. Luckily, we have people like Kate Becker and Dr. Duchin here in King County that are really kind of just, I really trust our local leaders so much more than necessarily the CDC or, what some of our government folks have said. So we're just really looking to them. And King County Public Health has been really incredible in just terms of opening up our spaces. We had a vaccination event here at Washington Hall where, it's the people that are just, they're not quite sure if they want to get the vaccine, but they're willing to do little small groups of people. And I think every little bit of that counts at this point.
Yeah. Well, we're going to end with this great question in the Q&A from Christopher Walker, who looks like is going to be making the move from North Texas up to the Seattle area. Congratulations to your spouse, Christopher, and congratulations to you on making that move. Could you all just maybe put an email address in the chat or a resource? Christopher is looking for ways that he can kind of immediately plug into the community and help support these efforts when they gets up there later in the summer. So if y'all could just put something out there, or if you have any quick answers to that, it's sort of an endless question, because there's so many opportunities to plug in the Seattle community. It's part of what makes it so special.
I do have one quick one. If you're here in July, we have our first public event at Pier 62. It's down on the waterfront. It's the 10th anniversary of Beatmasters, and it's a producer's battle. And Friends of Waterfront is our host. So I'll put that in the chat, Friends of Waterfront, or you can check out our website, and I'll put a couple links in.
Awesome.
And I just threw oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I was going to say Friends of the Waterfront has a whole list of summer programming that I just found out about it. They're doing like dancing on the pier and music and all kinds of performances. So that's something that's already being scheduled. But I'm on this downtown revitalization work group, and we're planning lots of downtown summer outdoor activities. So you could also look at visitseattle.org, which is like the tourism site that'll be listing all of these events. And the Downtown Seattle Association will also have information. And then you could check out The Stranger, which is our online and sometimes physical newspaper of all of the arts and culture goings on around town.
Awesome.
Well, and I put my email in there, and Kitty did too. Please, Matthew, reach out when you get here. I'd be happy to help connect you.
Christopher, yeah. All righty, Seattle folks, hang in there. Keep up the great work. Thank you for everything that you share with us and the broader community. And we'll be seeing you real soon. Have a great rest of your day.